Hello and welcome to this week's Glasstire Top 5. It is the week of May 30th, 2019. I'm Brandon Zek.
I'm Rainey Knudson.
And
this is my last top 5 as publisher of Glasstire. I am stepping down officially tomorrow, and you're taking over as publisher officially.
New times,
new
the
day.
Tide comes and goes.
Yes.
We'll miss you.
Thank you. So with that, we are doing something a little different from our normal top 5 countdown of art events this week. This week is Rainey's top 5 art memories from doing Glasstire for the past 18 years, aka my top 5 favorite memories.
A little bit of art, a little bit of big picture things, a little bit lessons learned, a little bit lessons still learning.
Always.
Always.
We are here in the rich aural soundscape of Herman Park, one of my favorite places in Houston. We wanted to come here because it's just so beautiful.
And it's summer. There's sprinklers going. There's children laughing.
Yes.
Everything you would expect in a beautiful park.
So number 5 on, frankly, this list is really not, the ordering of this list isn't really important.
It's a little arbitrary.
It's a little arbitrary. Number 5 this week is not an event or an art show, but a space, the Rice Gallery. The Rice Art Gallery ran from, I want to say 1995 to 2017. And I picked this space because it's an example of a simple idea done very, very well, and the power of doing a simple idea well over and over for many years. I talked to Kim Davenport, the director of the gallery, about this, and it really, the story was very much the space itself. It was a glass-fronted gallery.
A little bit of a fish tank, a little bit of a diorama.
Yeah, you looked into this space. It was very much about this almost proscenium, almost like a stage. And so she decided early on that she was only going to do installation art. So it was only installation art. And I think she did only non-Texas artists because she felt like Texas artists were getting plenty of traction elsewhere. I don't know that she would maybe agree with that later on. I don't know. But in any event, that was the decision that she made, to bring people to Texas and to Rice that people would not see otherwise. And so for many, many years, they just did a stunning, spectacular series of these installations, incredible artists coming through. There are so many of them that I remember and love and was just so moved by.
And one of the really successful things about it is they kind of had different degrees of interactivity between the shows. Sometimes it was an environment that was completely immersive and interactive. Sometimes you could only view it through the windows. It just varied in a really nice way that was all based upon the structure of one simple rectangular space.
As a tribute to the idea that if you stick with something and keep doing it and just do a fantastic job with it, you can change the world. Number 4 on my list is the 2002 exhibition of the G's Ben Quilts at the Museum of Fine Arts Houston. Now, since this time, the G's Ben Quilts are like a phenomenon in the world, and they've become really very heavily exposed. And it's almost like you go to a museum gift shop and you get your Van Gogh coffee mug and your G's Ben Quilt mouse pad. But cast our minds back, there was a time when nobody had heard of the G's Ben Quilts outside of the quilters themselves and a few people. And in 2002, the MFAH did this show. And when I saw that they were bringing quilts, not knowing anything about the quilts or the people who made them or any of the backstory or what they look like, I went on Glasstire and I was like, quilts? The MFAH is bringing quilts? What are they thinking? Ugh! Thinking it was going to be some schmaltzy Americana kind of a deal. And this was the earliest days of the Beck building. It was brand new, and it may have been the first show in the downstairs very tall galleries in the Beck building, but it was one of the first shows for sure. And I'll never forget walking into that show and just being blown away at how formally beautiful, how interesting, how spectacular they looked in that space. It's still to this day my favorite show in the Beck building. Downstairs galleries that I've ever seen. And so I went on Glasstire after seeing it and I ate crow. And I said I was wrong and this show was great and here's why it's great and I just loved it and everybody needs to go see the show. I heard, and I don't even remember who told me or how I heard this, but I heard that Peter Marzio himself, the director of the MFAH, was very gratified knowing that I had come back to the subject and revised my opinion and sort of publicly admitted that I was completely in the wrong in prejudging the show. And so there were a couple of things I learned from this. Number one, I just appreciate the quilts, appreciated them for the first time. But number two, which is a lesson we hold at Glasstire, which is never prejudge a show, never form an opinion before you've actually seen the work. There's a lot of work that looks great in photographs that doesn't look great in person, and vice versa.
There's a little bit of what we do with that via top 5 videos, but
well, those are just good guesses.
to.
Those are our best guesses. Those are like, we think it's going to be good, but really you can never know until you see work in person. And the other thing I learned was that people read Glasstire, and so don't be cavalier, but take what we're doing seriously, was the lesson from that. Number 3 of my favorite memories was a series of articles that the artist Mark Flood did for us in 2006. The series was called Objects in the Mirror. He named it. That was the name of his column.
And what was his pen name?
He didn't publish under his name Mark Flood, which is not his real name anyway. He published under Clark Flood, which was the twin brother of Mark Flood. So I'm going to go ahead and publicly say that that actually was Mark Flood. If I've disabused anybody, I know. Sorry to pop everyone's bubble on that. But I'm very proud of these articles. This was early on. This was 5 years into Glasstire. We didn't really have money to pay people. We were very scrappy and very small, still 5 years into it. And he just did this series of articles that were truly brilliant, and talking about the Miami Art Fair, which was pretty new in those days. And it was just a wonderful series of articles. I'm very proud of them. Smart writing. And that was an example of something from the very beginning, and that continues to this day with Glasstire, which is publishing the writing of artists. And we've always been very dedicated to that, and always many of our best writers have been artists themselves. And I think it makes sense, because no one is better at looking at art and thinking about art than people who themselves make it and are in the game. So I love those articles. We'll include a link in this post about where you can find those articles on Glasstire if you want to go revisit the Objects in a Mirror series. They really are a lot of fun.
And so number 2 is a project that happened in the late 1990s, and you're going to wade a little bit into nepotism with this.
Yeah, no, this is super nepotistic, and I just don't care. Number 2 is the Art Guys Suits project. This was right around the time that I met the Art Guys, and I am now married to one of the Art Guys and have been for these 16 years. It is hard to describe to people today how exciting this was and what a big deal this was. The whole art scene in Houston was paying attention to this. It was big news, and it was exciting because it was the revitalization of downtown Houston. Downtown Houston really had been kind of a wasteland before this. And this was the opening of the Rice Hotel, which I remember as a child always being sort of derelict and boarded up. So they had redone the Rice Hotel, and the Art Guys had a parade in their suits, which they had sold advertising on. It was a year-long project for the artists, but the kickoff party, they had a parade, and they walked up the street. It ended in this huge public party at the Rice Hotel. It was so exciting, and nobody had seen anything like this. I mean, I had never seen anything like this, but nothing had really been like this in terms of an artist-driven art project event open to the public with all these liquor sponsors and beer sponsors. And Todd Oldham had designed the suits, and Selvin Jarman, the local designer, had designed the overcoats. And they had a runway show of the suits, which was very short, as you can imagine, because there were only two outfits to show. And it was just a wild party, and the Rice Ballroom was raw. They didn't have carpet down or anything. I mean, it was really raw, and I don't even know if it was painted. It was still very sort of like, we're fixing this up. It was just such an exciting thing, and it was an example. It was the first time I really saw artists completely working outside of the art world, outside of the gallery and museum system, in the public, doing work in public. Yes, lots of artists did it before the Art Guys. Yes, lots of artists have done it since then. But that was a seminal moment of paying attention to the Houston art scene for me, and I met my husband.
And so number 1,
your
top memory piece of art, knowledge, history, trivia for your time at Glasstire.
Yeah, it predates Glasstire again, but it was the Robert Rauschenberg retrospective in 1998, co-hosted by the Menil Collection, the Museum of Fine Arts Houston, and the CAM. And I have told this story many times, but in the whole thing, the 3-part thing was truly incredible. And in the Menil, when you walked in, right there in the lobby, they had his glass tires. and they made such an impression on me. And I remember discussing this piece with Michael Galbraith, my husband, later. And so when I, a couple of years later, was trying to think of a name for Glasstire and trying to find a URL for Glasstire, for some reason, I really have always loved the material of glass, and I like glass, even though so much art glass is terrible. I love the material of glass. And I was looking for names that involve the word glass. And I will never forget it. I vividly remember Michael calling me up on the phone, and I said, hello, and he said, Glasstire. And I immediately knew what he was talking about. And I immediately went on, and I was like, oh! And I went on, and I found it, and glasstire.com was available, and I snagged it for $35 right then and there. And it was an homage to Robert Rauschenberg. And it was, you know, over the years has sort of crystallized, if you will, into this idea of driving and driving great distances at great speed with great clarity, and what the tires represent, the tension in the material versus the object itself. The fact that Robert Rauschenberg was from Texas, from Port Arthur originally. And so my number one memory has to be that show and that piece and that origin story of the name, which, yes, was my husband's idea. I'm finally coming clean. And there are so many more memories. I think I can remember my first trip to West Texas, and I remember shows in San Antonio and Fort Worth at the old Fort Worth Modern, and many, many, many memories, many, many, many artists, wonderful people that I have loved and enjoyed the work of doing Glasstire so much. And now it's time to move on. And now it's time for you to take it away. And Christina Reese, our editor-in-chief, and everybody else. Here comes the train.
Here comes the train. It's almost like a symbol.
Toot toot! Go see some art. They're on their way to taking over the art world everywhere.
Yes!